I end up into a discussion with it about, you try to get to politics or something just to see that what are the boundaries where it has been actually programmed not to answer anymore. So obviously anything hateful is out. Usually political things are out and so forth. So, but it's just fun to see, like, how was it trained and what are the boundaries that where the coders had or the developers have actually put in place, what they don't want to address. And I think when I discussed it with our people as well, one of the concerns they raised was, pro chatbots or overall was that because it doesn't really understand the words, there is a chance of an error. And then when you're dealing with people's money, then, do you really want to take that risk that, something goes off there? So it should be still, I think, these days, human supervised, at least. The other thought that came to me similarly is if we would turn it around and have instead of auto invest, an AI investor that you could somehow kind of use as an investment agent or investment help for yourself to pick up the loans you want. But let's say if an LO's, loans tend to default at 18 months and the agent would tell you that, hey, only go into loans for 16 months max in this one. So perhaps something like this could work to help the investor, but we still would need to give the investor to have the final say in where they invest, because otherwise you'll become an asset manager, which we are not. So we wouldn't be investing on behalf of you. You will do the investments yourself. Is it something that can be a competitive advantage that makes you exponentially better than the others? If it is, then you should do it in-house. But if it only gives you a linear operational improvement, then why not buy it? Because building something in-house generally, at least in the short terms, is always more expensive.
Welcome back to Income Insights episode number 7. I'm your host, Denny Neidhardt, and alongside me once again, Income founder Kimmo Rytkönen. Kimmo, good to see you. I know you're currently in Dubai, living the lifestyle, I guess. Maybe you can let our listeners know what your business is currently in the Emirates.
Hi, Denny. Happy to be back. Well, not really. You can't really say living the lifestyle. There was a few conferences that were quite interesting that I visited, and then I thought just for the summer to have a little bit of distance work. And networking, obviously, with some fintech people and so forth. But yeah, not really what you would expect to see in Dubai Instagrammers accounts.
Okay, so you're not on the verge of becoming Estonia's next hottest influencer on the rise.
No ideas or no such ideas or plans of renting Lamborghinis and no posing on Instagram. So.
All right. Yeah, apparently you're traveling quite a lot. I guess that's the beauty and the freedom that we have these days, but also like being in your position, because I recall like from the last episodes, you've been to Asia, to Dubai. Maybe it's even the second time in Dubai, if I recall correctly. So you seem to be more often outside of Estonia than being actually inside your, let's say, normal environment, if there is such.
Yeah, lately so. I mean, maybe the first 3 years or 2 years of income, I was pretty much living in the office, right? So need to take some of that time back. But yeah, like you said, today's world is so connected. It doesn't matter where you are. Essentially, like I have the team calls lined up after this one as well. So we have a Monday town hall call. So that comes right after this recording and so forth. So. Yeah, we're all connected, luckily, these days.
Yeah, and now some good compensation for the struggle in the early years of income, I guess. Listen, today, as we said prior to recording the call, we want to deep dive a little bit more into artificial intelligence today and its impact on the peer-to-peer lending space. But before we get there, we just want to quickly recap a couple of events that recently happened on income. I took a couple notes because there have been quite a few of them. Now, one was obviously you transitioned the bank account on May 1st. You moved from LHV to a Verifone now. Can you maybe briefly explain why you made that move?
Yeah, it's like we obviously looking all the time for partners that have good connectivity, right? So as we're an international company, meaning money transfers move here and there. So we were looking for a payment provider that could help us there. Pricing questions, obviously, another thing, and Verifo works with other crowdfunding sites as well. So essentially, we found a good match there, and then just decided, okay, let's go forward with it. Just optimizing certain things and costs as well.
Okay, understood. Yeah, from my understanding, LHV probably one of, if I recall correctly, one of the biggest banks in the Baltics, or very dominant. So never heard of Verifo before, but aside, nothing has really changed.
It's
a regulated bank institute.
Correct.
But it doesn't come along with any personalized IBAN accounts, or?
Well, it has the segregation in a similar fashion as banks do, right? So you have a client account and so forth. So I think it just works better overall, looking at all the different countries we need to send money these days. And yeah, I mean, business as usual in that sense. LHV was one of the banks, obviously. Yeah, you're right. One of the big ones, listed bank as well, so highly reputable. But yeah, we thought that, Verifo ticks the boxes, works with other crowdfunding platforms, understands our business a bit better, perhaps in that sense, our needs. Yeah, and we looked at some international providers as well, other ones, but this seemed to be the best solution.
Understood. Then we had also two of your core lenders publishing their annual reports for 2023. It was DanaRupiah and ITF Group. Now, just quickly looking at the results, we had DanaRupiah slightly, missing out on matching the profit level from 2022, but still, very decent performance, 13.7 million euros in profit, equity now above 30 million euros. What did you see from their numbers? Is there maybe anything to add? And also, did income change anything in particular now in terms of the risk assessment from the company, adjusting the junior share or something? Did it have any impact then on the platform?
No, not really. I mean, we looked at it. There was nothing alarming as such, and we thought that, okay, nothing requires attention that we should highlight or actually raise with them. So we're quite okay with that. Previous portfolio update we did with them, we actually increased the advance rate because the performance was better. Perhaps good to note also, Indonesia's regulator has dropped the APRs again some time ago. So obviously these are the things that might contribute to the decrease in profit, but like you said, healthy level. Business seems to be moving in the right direction, so nothing much to add.
Maybe also one of the reasons why they decreased the funding level now on income, because I remember like the latest assets also came just with, I think, 13. Now sometimes it was even 15%, but also I've seen some with 13.
Yeah, I think these are the things, companies testing to see what is the level of funding that they can raise, obviously, but probably driven by, of course, the falling bottom line as well. APR caps are a very simple thing that, if your profitability or max profitability that you can charge is cut, then you need to find operational and funding cost savings. And then one of those ways is obviously to look for a cheaper source of funding. Or, if you're on marketplaces, then to adjust the pricing up a little bit. And I think, to be honest, if it's this way that you do it to retain your profitability, then actually, and taking a little bit of a funding cost stress off the company, then this is actually a good move to do. And kind of maybe good for investors, even if it doesn't feel good to see that, hey, my 15 turned to 13. But then again, I've heard stories also of companies where they have a funding cost of 20. If they could raise by 10, they would be profitable. So actually the investor in a way is shooting themselves in the leg. And these are larger institutions that are asking for, higher rates. But, I've heard founders complain before that, the too high cost of funding is killing my business, and everybody would be happy. There would be a more sustainable business model if this was launched. So I think two sides to many things.
But the same goes obviously for DanaRupiah, depending on their, let's say, position inside the market now with dropping APR caps, maybe able to, push some competitors out of business, maybe smaller ones, and the theory of the big fish eating the small ones. So maybe, wouldn't be the first time we see like regulation, like seems to be like a little bit of a limiting factor for lenders, but at the same time also, taking competition out from the market. So it kind of has also here its, twofold view on the topic, I guess.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, like somebody said, every startup is building a moat around them, like to prevent competition. And then the regulator or regulation that's the drawbridge you draw over your moat. And what it means is generally the same applies to Facebook and all the other big ones, right? So once regulation comes, then the small companies, they won't have the chance to compete. You won't be able to hire that army of lawyers needed to run a bank, for example, if you're just a startup. So in a way, regulation is it depends on which side of the drawbridge you are, but yeah. Of course. Is it good or bad?
Yeah, maybe in general the APR cap topic may be something we can address at a larger scale in the future. I think it's also very interesting topic to look a bit deeper into it. Let's go back to ITF Group, the second lender you had presenting their financials. Also here, good profit level, have almost doubled from the previous year, made 1.1 million euros in profit, equity a bit above 5 million euros now. Also here, anything that changed for income looking at the financials?
No, not really. Nothing to highlight. I think also last time when we did the update on their book, if I'm not mistaken, also there was actually an improvement. It's a very well performing portfolio from our understanding. So yeah, the guys have a long track and they know what they're doing, seems to be. So yeah, there was nothing much to highlight. Good results.
Hashtag ITF requested. And
yes.
And yeah, maybe just to wrap up this topic, I'm curious, like obviously financials, we have a saying in Germany, I don't know if that's actually international, but nothing is older than the newspaper of yesterday. And so when you look at the financials, obviously this is from 2023, how big is the importance of those financials compared to, let's say, the actual performance of their loan book, and something that you look more into on a, let's say, more frequent basis?
Well, things can change fast, right? But depending, if you look at like the market as such, like macroeconomy in that sense, that doesn't affect books very fast, right? So if there's a downturn, then generally it takes quite a bit of time for all the unemployment and other things to start showing there. So I think quarterly numbers are good, but you wouldn't expect anything much there. Regulatory changes can, of course, change a lot in a very short time, right? So they can completely make you lose profitability or even have to turn around your business model. So that's one thing. We saw some of that happening in Finland back in the days. Very, very strict, even up to date, very strict APR caps, and a lot of companies have had to leave the market, whereas they had very lucrative businesses before. But I'd still say the updates on the loan books, those are the ones where we see the most, because if your loan book is good, your results will probably be good as well.
One follows the other.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. And, lastly, I think good trend moving forward in April, we saw assets under management grew by 1.5 million euro. Now, as we speak, we're close to 12 million euro AUM. So I guess also good trend for now, and hopefully income will carry on like this in May. All right. Yeah, then let's dive into the main topic of today's episode, which is artificial intelligence in peer-to-peer lending. But I would say I know you're quite a tech savvy guy, you're very interested, cryptocurrency, blockchain, you're very, let's say, tech driven. before we go into detail with, let's say, peer-to-peer lending specifics or something in particular with income, what's your general view maybe on AI these days? How do you embrace this kind of new technology? Is it something you use in your private life, or to, let's say, which extent are you like playing around with this new technology these days or the last couple months?
Yeah, there's a good one. I mean, just to advertise other podcasts as well. There's Moonshots, Peter Diamandis. He has a Singularity University. Is his sort of a project, basically promoting new technology. They have, what happened in tech last week, and they've been discussing AI also quite a lot in the recent episodes. So if somebody's interested to really deep dive into those, then that comes as a suggestion. It's a very good podcast for future stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm using Gemini mostly. So I bought the Pro version. It's maybe like 19 euros a month or whatever. So it gives you a slightly better experience, and looking at some reviews, it should be better than ChatGPT. So difference there was that ChatGPT is limited to, I think, information until 2020, was it November? And Gemini is Google's one.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So and Gemini is basically online, connected all the time. So yeah, I'm playing around with both, mostly Gemini. So it's interesting. So I think that's when somebody says AI, then that's what actually most people these days talk. It's a large language model, and it's not really an intelligence as such, right? So that's the funny thing. It doesn't understand the words it spouts. It takes, how to say, it predicts probabilities of one word leading to another, and then it builds coherent sentences. So in a way, yes, it's intellect, but actually it's kind of a statistical prediction. Perhaps you could say it kind of guesses the words, if not in the same way as a human would guess. So it's not really yet real intelligence, but it's fascinating. Like the amount and the way it can actually, it feels like you're talking to a human, or and most of the stuff makes sense. You need to double check it, because like I said, it doesn't understand the words itself, but it still does the output. But yeah, I use it a lot. I mean, to get an idea of things, quickly asking, tell me about this, tell me about that, tell me about, whatever. And you get a really good, kind of an outline of the topic. And then you can deep dive. And if you want to, summarize books, it does that as well. So that's a good hack. So if ask like, what are the best books about crowdfunding? Gives you a list of books, and then said, okay, give me a summary of this book. And it actually, usually, if that book is within the data set, it can give you a summary of what the book is about. So it's quite interesting. So in use, really.
Interesting insights here. Now, is it more, let's say, curiosity-driven requests that you send out, and you just want to see like what the scope is of AI, or is it something actually you try to facilitate, let's say, to a productive level, because you believe like, okay, there's, I don't know, a business email I should answer maybe in the following way, and it has more the extent of how can it really help me on a day-to-day basis, aside from just playing around with it just for the sake of fun.
I think there's two things. Like, one is obviously writing things. So if you want to do for example, a simple rental agreement, or you want to do a simple agreement, or a simple NDA agreement, or whatever, you can prompt it to do that as well. Obviously, you'll need to review it yourself and make sure that it makes sense, but it actually builds you the structure. Whereas before, I would have, if I didn't have an old template, I would do an NDA from scratch, for example. But obviously, I have enough experience to see that the output of ChatGPT makes sense. That and maybe you do a few little amendments, but it gives you a structure and saves you time in that sense. You can use it on LinkedIn posts if you wish to. I mean, I tested that, but actually it's faster for me to write my thoughts on the post instead of using it. But still, you could do it in this sense that you could probably increase productivity in your social media stuff that you do. in a company. Emails, again, maybe faster to type something yourself than going in there, but for sure, for those who might not necessarily have the best English or are unsure about how to address someone, perhaps even from a different culture, then for sure, very useful. And then I play around. I end up into a discussion with it about, you try to get to politics or something, just to see that what are the boundaries where it has been actually programmed not to answer anymore. So obviously anything hateful is out. Usually political things are out, and so forth. So, but it's just fun to see, like, how was it trained and what are the boundaries that where where the coders had, or the developers have actually put in place, what they don't want to address. So yeah, it's interesting.
Definitely. Yeah, just a quick addition to LinkedIn, because recently I actually saw, because I opened up a, let's say, business account for Rethink peer-to-peer. And when I was, because with my private account, I rarely use it, don't write any posts at all. And then I tried to set up a first post, and I saw, like, below the, okay, you can post it, there was also a button with rewrite with AI. So apparently it's already integrated on LinkedIn that you or people are, let's say, encouraged to take advantage of this, if we want to phrase it like this, and kind of utilize it also for their posts to gain, let's say, a better language or a better expression of their thoughts, whatever the case may be. But it's already, let's say, an integral part apparently of LinkedIn as a feature. So that's something I also recently observed.
It's also actually a part of Gmail already. So I'm not sure if it's in the free one, but at least if you buy the subscription, so the subscription, okay, goes to a Google or advertisement now, but you get some on, like, cloud drive space, and then you get the better Gemini to use and so forth. But there is also in Gmail, there's a button that you can use AI to write your email, which is kind of good, but on the other hand, relatively scary. What happens when you need to write without an AI? If you if that's how you grow up, these are maybe the question marks that I'd have around it. Is that, does it make us dumber the same way as GPS makes us unable to navigate without it while driving a car? So you're just following a dot. And then if the dot disappears, you're like, hey, where am I? What happened? Unable to drive anywhere. So that's maybe a concern.
I think, exactly what you say. It's like the inability to really make up your own mind, your own thoughts, and express yourself without any easy assistance along the way. So I think, that's the beauty, I think, of AI. There's so much room for debate in terms of, like, risk involved, ethics and stuff. For now, let's try to find the bridge to peer-to-peer lending and see how we can assess the impact of AI on, peer-to-peer platforms, business operations already these days. And I want to start off by sharing a couple of results that I made from a recent survey. Also, Income has been a part of it, because I wanted to find out more about this topic. There will be also an upcoming article and video fairly soon, probably on the Saturday after we publish this episode. And one of my first questions was, how do platforms assess the impact AI has already these days on, let's say, the day-to-day platforms operations? I left it quite open. Obviously, this can be from as simple as, for marketing operations, for the risk assessment, fraud prevention. I left it quite open. And I wanted to know, like, on a scale from 1 to 10, how important is AI already these days for most platforms? Scale from 1 to 10, while 10 is very high impact and 1 is the lowest. And the average score these days, so the status quo, was with a score of 4.9. So already, I think, quite high, the impact. I assumed a lot lower number here. And then consequently, what's the impact that platforms forecast by year 2030? And there we had an average score of 8.5 already. So in about 6 years' time, platforms assume like AI will be almost like all over the place, and you can't almost like live or operate without it, or at least, you know, the benefits outweigh the potential risks. So that was quite interesting, and kind of, you know, shows the way how this topic will more and more go into peer-to-peer lending as such. Now, obviously, we have you being at the forefront from, let's say, one company in the marketplace. What can you add? Like, let's say for income, how important is AI as of, you know, these days? How do you utilize it for your current business operations?
Well, I think almost every single company, a crowdfunding company or peer-to-peer, probably uses it already to some extent. And I mean, and this will, like you said, if we're at 4.9, and I think it mostly goes to these large language models, right? So it's you know, it's a marketing person polishing something with the GPT or with Gemini. You know, it's somebody adjusting their email, asking questions, making, you know, mind maps, ideas. So I think, and then obviously the obvious one is chatbots, right? So those fit really well to Geminis or GPTs, and you already have existing integrations where you could actually, you train it a bit so that it becomes specific to your customers and the questions. I guess you would start with, you know, uploading your frequently asked questions in there and with the answers, and then it would at least have those. But that's a simple one. I think it's really like the large language models are already in use one way or another, manually or automated through a chatbot. So that's a simple thing. In our case, we don't have chatbots at the moment. We've looked into a few ones. Again, you know, we wouldn't probably start developing it our own. We would probably look at something that comes out of the package, and, you know, then you train it if we would need one. And then, yeah, I guess everyday polishing of texts and reviewing for errors and other things. Mainly visual things, I would say. This means blog posts, other things, could be, you know, website. Obviously, you wouldn't trust it to do much else, right? So when I said to you before that, hey, you could do an NDA if you want to do a non-disclosure agreement. Well, you know, we wouldn't be doing agreements through Gemini or ChatGPT that have any significance. So you would still need manual lawyers for that, and human touch. And I think when I discussed it with our people as well, one of the concerns they raised was, if, you know, pro chatbots or overall, was that because it doesn't really understand the words, there is a chance of an error. And then when you're dealing with people's money, then, you know, do you really want to take that risk that, you know, something goes off there? So that should be still, I think, these days, human supervised at least. So yeah, I could maybe that's a short income look on AI.
Maybe I can add a little from the survey that I conducted. So the most mentions I received was for marketing purposes. So whether that was, you know, develop a marketing strategy, what can we improve on a SEO side? You know, content creation, can you know, write certain paragraphs about a dedicated topic, for instance, you know, for blog posts, for newsletters. So that was mentioned the most, but right after it was a risk assessment. So it's already implemented in, you know, looking the credit worthiness aspect. And then followed by support chatbots. I kind of made my own scale in terms of how I have put together the different criteria. So support chatbots came into third, and then some mentions also for fraud prevention or for onboarding using AI. You know, kind of can go hand in hand as well. But yeah, so that was the most frequent mentions I had in the survey. Now, what's interesting is obviously for many platforms that have answered, you know, it's about the risk assessment. It came from platforms that obviously deal with the borrowers directly, you know, through their lenders. Now that's a bit of a different case with income, as you are dealing mostly with the lender directly and not necessarily with the borrower. So how is it maybe for from the income perspective? Do you look at using AI maybe also to assess the lender performance to an extent? And is that an idea you're playing around? Have you tried things in the past, or do you see this as a future project of yours maybe, or is it really something that you will continue to do manually?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that you're absolutely right in the difference between having your own lender as such, and then you would maybe, if you would be borrowing yourself money, the Bondoras or others of the world, where there's actually like P2P platforms as such, then you would really do the risk assessment, and that's where you would not use a large language model. You would go into kind of this machine learning domain. So the idea is that you would teach the computer that with the data you have on the borrowers, and then it would keep on learning without actually you needing to code again. So kind of like a similar way that a human analyst would take the data, look at it, what is the default rate or the proposed default rate, and then it would let it run for another year and then do an update on that. So here the idea would be that it would be a constantly evolving kind of a gradual curve of improvement where the machine learns itself. So this would be obviously something, and I just read there was a study made. One bank in US claimed that they had received or had managed to get much better results with machine learning. I know all data scientists are not so, how would I say, positive about it. And I think FICO, the big credit bureau in US, the FICO score, they just claimed at least that they took machine learning as part of their scoring and have seen better results. So perhaps that's a place. For us, I think in terms of, again, working with the LOs, we would obviously be very happy with the LOs improving their quality, doing whatever with the machine learning or scoring. But it's a bit difficult to say what benefit would we get from using an AI at this point. I mean, in a way, if we would receive all the data through the API to our platform, then perhaps we could crunch it and have some sort of an AI. Because today we would be, from the API perspective, we would be very limited still to the performance of the loans on the platform, right? So, and perhaps you could have some sort of a risk assessment AI looking into, is there an increase in defaulted loans or is there not, and trying to gauge that if something is off there. The other thought that came to me similarly is if we would turn it around and have instead of auto invest, an AI investor that you could somehow kind of use as an investment agent or investment help for yourself to pick up the loans you want. If ITF, just not specifically them, but let's say if an LO's loans tend to default at 18 months, and the agent would tell you that, hey, only go into loans for 16 months max in this one. So perhaps something like this could work to help the investor, but we still would need to give the investor to have the final say in where they invest, because otherwise you'll become an asset manager, which we are not. So we wouldn't be investing on behalf of you. You will do the investments yourself. So maybe for some sort of insights, but it's not a project at the moment, kind of like brainstorming here on the go. So
yeah.
By the way, you mentioned marketing. One more topic on marketing and SEO. AI actually, the Google actually knows if it's made by AI. It's too good of a text if you don't dumb it down as a human. So it's too perfect. So beware all marketing managers and people who use it for content. You need to dumb it down. Otherwise, it doesn't qualify as very good SEO content.
Well, yeah, good point. I also read about this. for me, to pick up again on what you previously said, because one aspect for me that was interesting also to find out which platforms are using external sources and which one have maybe particular developed internal sources for AI. And all of them mentioned the usage of external AI, but there was 3 platforms also saying like they have started to make, programming their own AI system. So when it comes for you to play around with that, AI investor idea, or maybe, like check on onboarding new lenders, do you think like this is more a crucial part where you would just trust your own developed system rather than going external, or how do you see let's say this internal external usage debate?
I guess it's a matter of your, what do you want to achieve with it, right? So if you want to, I said it to someone just that, is it an in-house system or an external system? So the question is that is it something that can be a competitive advantage that makes you exponentially better than the others, right? So if it is, then you should do it in-house. But if it only gives you a linear operational improvement, then why not buy it? Because building something in-house generally, at least in the short terms, is always more expensive. And it's, it requires a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of resources away from the team from something else. So, like, for example, a chatbot, I don't think anybody should develop. That's my personal opinion. Nobody should develop a chatbot today again from scratch, because you have so many of them available. So you would just pick and mix whatever you want. And you can see that actually in a lot of some banking startups as well, or neobanks, that they have a modular stuff, some modular systems. Some of it they build themselves, and then certain pieces they buy from outside providers, which don't again give you that competitive advantage, right? So who cares whose chatbot you're using? It's not going to make it or break it. So so maybe that's my thinking about external, internal.
All right. Yeah, we're unfortunately running soon out of time, so let's try to wrap this up. But just a quick spoiler: we said maybe with Income CEO Lavrenti Tsudakov, we can have also, let's say, ongoing debate about this. From who I understand is also a bit deeper into the topic. So maybe in one of the next episodes we can bring him along and then go a bit deeper into this topic as well. Now, since we're running out of time fairly soon, just one last thing. The outlook basically for the upcoming weeks. Last episode, you mentioned there's 2 lenders very close to be onboarded, or at least, let's say, on the hotter seat. What's the status quo here right now?
Still to remain on the status or on the hot seat. So we'll have a few calls today actually with them again, and mainly ironing last commercial things, but looks positive.
Okay, so the chances of onboarding have increased.
Are very high. They are, yes, at least as high as before, if not higher.
Okay, then maybe by the next time we talk again, there will be.
We would hope so.
There will be good news. All right, Kimmo, thank you very much for this insightful and entertaining discussion surrounding AI and peer-to-peer lending, and what the thoughts are of Income with using that technology. Looking forward to catch up with you next time. Thanks again, and we speak soon.
Yep, thanks, Denny.